Historical coincidences. Chance or something greater? Is destiny in control? Coincidences or signs of something greater? What exactly is a coincidence? Many of us have experienced moments so unexpected, so improbable, that we can't help but wonder if something else is at play. Life is full of encounters, missed connections, unexpected moments, and situations that seem orchestrated by an invisible force. How many times have you found yourself in a situation that made you pause and think, "This is too much of a coincidence"? Imagine running into a friend you haven't seen in years, on the very day you were thinking about them, or passing through an unfamiliar street only to find something that would change your life completely. All these small daily events are easily dismissed as coincidences. But when we look to the past, when we delve into history, we see that some coincidences are so complex, so perfectly aligned, that they make us question whether they are simply chance or if something greater is at work. In this video, we will embark on a fascinating journey through the greatest coincidences in history. From crucial political figures to catastrophic events that shape the world as we know it, these coincidences defy logic and evoke deep reflections on the role of chance and destiny. These stories range from the mysteriously interconnected lives of U.S. presidents to tragedies foreshadowed in works of fiction and moments where individual decisions altered the course of humanity. Get ready to rethink your understanding of what constitutes a coincidence and to question just how much of our lives we really control. Coincidences and the question of destiny. Are we really in control? Before we dive into the historical coincidences that challenge human understanding, let's reflect on the very concept of coincidence. What makes us think that certain events cannot simply be random? Is our mind naturally inclined to seek patterns and connections, even where they don't exist? The answer may lie in a combination of psychological and philosophical factors. The human brain is wired to find patterns amidst chaos. Since ancient times, our ancestors had to identify patterns to survive, whether in predicting weather changes, hunting, or avoiding predators. This deep-seated desire to find meaning in things could be why we are prone to seeing coincidences everywhere. However, when these patterns become so precise and so unusual, we start to wonder if something deeper is happening. The renowned Swiss psychologist Carl Jung coined the term synchronicity to describe situations where events that seem unrelated occur together in a meaningful way, without any apparent causal relationship. For Jung, these coincidences were not merely the result of randomness, but manifestations of a deeper order in the universe. This notion of synchronicity challenges the idea that we are merely subject to random forces in an indifferent universe. It suggests that in some way, the universe conspires to align certain events in our lives, as if everything is connected by invisible threads. And when we look back at history, we find examples that lead us to question whether these threads really exist. Now, let's explore some of the most intriguing historical coincidences and question whether they are mere products of chance or reflections of a higher force. Lincoln and Kennedy. A classic case of starting coincidences among all the historical coincidences, the one involving Presidents Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy is perhaps the most famous and widely discussed. The similarities between their lives, terms in office, and deaths are so extraordinary that many people wonder if there is something more behind it. Both presidents were elected exactly 100 years apart, Lincoln in 1860 and Kennedy in 1960. And both led during critical moments of national division. Lincoln presided over the United States during the Civil War, a devastating conflict that pitted the North against the South and would determine the nation's future. Kennedy, on the other hand, faced a crisis of equal magnitude, the Cold War, which threatened to involve the world in nuclear war. Just as Lincoln had to make crucial decisions to keep the nation united, Kennedy had to deal with escalating tensions between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. But the most chilling coincidences appear when we examine their deaths. Both presidents were assassinated by gunfire on a Friday, and both were shot in the head. Lincoln was killed at Ford's Theater, while Kennedy was shot in a Lincoln car, which was manufactured by Ford. Furthermore, Lincoln had a secretary named Kennedy, while Kennedy had a secretary named Lincoln. The level of repeated details is, at the very least, unsettling. John Wilkes Booth, Lincoln's assassin, was born in 1839. Lee Harvey Oswald, Kennedy's assassin, was born in 1939, exactly 100 years apart. Both assassins were killed before they could be brought to trial, which also prevents us from fully understanding their motivations. Even more curious, Lincoln was succeeded by Andrew Johnson, born in 1808, and Kennedy was succeeded by Lyndon B. Johnson, born in 1908, again, maintaining the 100-year pattern between the events. These coincidences make us deeply reflect on the nature of destiny. Does history really repeat itself? Are these patterns inevitable? Or are these repetitions merely illustrations of chance? The similarities between Lincoln and Kennedy are so impressive that they raise the hypothesis that, in some way, destiny shaped their lives almost identically. The Titanic and the book Futility. Premonition, or just a visionary observation? In 1898, 14 years before the Titanic sank on its maiden voyage, an author named Morgan Robertson published a book titled Futility, or The Wreck of the Titan. In the novel, a fictional ship named Titan, one of the largest and most luxurious passenger liners ever built, set sail on its maiden voyage across the North Atlantic. Just like the Titanic, the Titan is considered unsinkable. And, exactly like the Titanic, it strikes an iceberg and sinks, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of passengers. The similarities between the fictional Titan and the Titanic are so impressive that many wonder whether Morgan Robertson had some form of premonition. After all, the Titan had nearly the same dimensions as the Titanic, and both the fictional and real ships lacked enough lifeboats for all aboard. Furthermore, both ships sank on a cold April night, and the cause of the disaster was the same: the collision with an iceberg. When the Titanic sank in 1912, people began drawing parallels between Robertson's work and the real tragedy, leading to speculation that the author might have had some intuitive sense of what was to come. But did Robertson really possess prophetic insight? Or did he simply make a prediction based on the reckless confidence in technology at the time? The Titanic represented the pinnacle of naval engineering, and the belief that it was unsinkable reflected humanity's pride and arrogance towards nature. These coincidences, however, raise an intriguing question. Were tragic events like the Titanic's sinking inevitable? Did Robertson, conscious of potential dangers, capture something between the lines of reality that led him to write a book so eerily similar to what would happen more than a decade later? What's even more interesting is the idea that our creations in fiction can often influence reality. Is the human mind powerful enough to predict the future in unconscious ways? Or is it the events of the present that inspire these creations? When we reflect on the Titanic and the Titan, we can't help but wonder, to what extent are fiction and reality intertwined? The incredible coincidence between Mark Twain and Halley's Comet. Mark Twain, one of America's greatest writers, is also involved in a coincidence that seems to defy any rational explanation. Twain was born on November 30th, 1835, the same year Halley's Comet made its passage through Earth. This comet, which orbits the Sun approximately every 76 years, has always been associated with extraordinary events and historical catastrophes, seen by some ancient cultures as an omen. But what makes this story even more fascinating is that in 1909, Twain made a public statement in a joking manner that would later prove to be prophetic. "I came in with Halley's Comet in 1835. It is coming again next year, and I wait to go out with it." Shortly after, on April 21st, 1910, Twain passed away, just one day after Halley's Comet made its closest approach to Earth that cycle. The precision of this coincidence is unsettling. Could Twain have had some intuition about what was about to happen? After all, he made a specific prediction that he would die with the comet's return, and that is exactly what happened. When we look at history, it has always had profound significance in various cultures. In ancient Rome, for instance, the appearance of a comet was often seen as an omen of death or drastic changes. In China, comets were believed to bring bad news or to be harbingers of major events. Twain's relationship with Halley's Comet raises questions about how much of a person's life can be connected to cosmic phenomena. Is there something else in the universe that links our lives with celestial events? Or was Twain merely a victim of an impressive but purely random coincidence? This episode in Twain's life is a classic example of how destiny and chance can seem intertwined in ways that defy any rational explanation. Perhaps Halley's Comet is a reminder that no matter how much we try to control our lives, the cosmos and its invisible forces will always have a role in our journeys. The beginning and end of the American Civil War. Wilmer McLean and the destiny that followed him. Wilmer McLean was a farmer whose role in the American Civil War might have been seen as secondary. Why? Were it not for the fact that the war literally began at his doorstep and ended in his living room. This kind of coincidence is so incredible that it feels like it was written for a movie script. In 1861, the First Battle of Bull Run, the first major battle of the Civil War, took place on McLean's property in Manassas, Virginia. During the conflict, his house was hit by a cannonball, damaging his property and endangering his family. Tired of the war and seeking a peaceful life, McLean decided to move to a quieter region. However, destiny seemed determined to follow him. McLean settled in a small village called Appomattox Courthouse, located in a rural and isolated area, believing he would be far from the horrors of the conflict. But for years later, in 1865, Confederate General Robert E. Lee and Union General Ulysses S. Grant met in McLean's home to discuss the terms of surrender that would officially end the Civil War. Thus, the war that began practically in Wilmer McLean's backyard ended in his living room. McLean later remarked ironically that the war began in my front yard and ended in my parlor. This coincidence is remarkable for several reasons. McLean tried to escape the conflict, but destiny brought him back to the center of one of the most important moments in American history. Was destiny truly chasing him, or was he merely a victim of unpredictable circumstances? As we reflect on this story, we can ask ourselves to what extent our attempts to avoid certain events are futile. Are we destined to experience certain things, regardless of how much we try to avoid them? McLean's story makes us think about how destiny, chance, and invisible forces might be shaping our lives in ways we cannot fully understand. Violet Jessup, the woman who survived the greatest maritime disasters, imagined surviving 3 of the greatest maritime disasters in history. That seems unimaginable, but that's exactly what happened to Violet Jessup, a woman whose survival story defies any logical explanation. Violet was an Argentine-British stewardess, and in 1911, she was aboard the RMS Olympic, the largest ocean liner in the world at the time. The Olympic collided with a British warship, the HMS Hawke, resulting in significant damage to the ship. However, Violet emerged unscathed. The following year, in 1912, Violet boarded the Titanic, one of the most famous ships of all time, on its maiden voyage. When the Titanic struck an iceberg and began to sink, Violet managed to escape in a lifeboat, once again surviving a disaster that claimed the lives of more than 1,500 people. But her story didn't end there. In 1916, Violet was aboard the HMHS Britannic, a hospital ship that had been converted for military use during World War I. The Britannic struck a naval mine in the Aegean Sea and sank quickly, but Violet survived yet again, narrowly escaping one of the worst maritime disasters of the time. Violet Jessup's life raises many questions about the role of destiny and luck. How is it possible for one person to survive 3 such massive maritime disasters? Was Violet extraordinarily lucky, or was there something more at play? Some might argue that Violet's story is an extreme example of luck. Others could say that she was destined to survive, that her role as a witness to these events was crucial. Either way, her story makes us think about how life can be unpredictable and how events that seem random might actually be connected by a higher force. The Erskine brothers. The mysterious connection between twins. The connection between twins has long fascinated humanity. Twins often share a bond that goes beyond the physical, a near telepathic connection that binds them in mysterious ways. However, the story of John and Arthur Erskine, identical twins, takes this connection to an extreme level. The brothers were inseparable, living parallel lives and sharing many experiences. But what truly makes their story stand out is the tragic and synchronous way they died. On a fateful day, both brothers were driving on separate roads, each on their own. However, both suffered nearly identical car accidents and died on the same day, just a few hours apart. This kind of coincidence is chilling. How is it possible for two twin brothers, living separate lives, to suffer the same fate on the same day? Is there a deeper connection between twins, a bond that goes beyond what we can understand? Science has explored the concept of twin connections, suggesting that they may share a deep empathy and emotional resonance that transcends distance. However, the story of the Erskine brothers raises the question of how far this bond can influence destiny. Were the Erskine brothers, in some way, destined to share the same fate, even in their final moments? Or was this just a tragic and incomprehensible coincidence? Either way, this story makes us reflect on the power of familial connections and how destiny can sometimes act in ways that defy comprehension. The attack on Pearl Harbor and the disturbing coincidences. The attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, was one of the most pivotal and devastating moments of World War II, leading the United States to enter the conflict. However, what many people do not know is that a series of disturbing coincidences surround the attack, raising questions about whether it could have been predicted or even prevented. 1 year before the attack, the Pearl Harbor Naval Base conducted an air defense exercise simulating a surprise attack, much like the one that would occur in 1941. The exercise predicted an air raid in the early morning, carried out by a fictitious enemy force. The similarity between the exercise and the real attack is striking. Furthermore, in 1925, U.S. Navy Lieutenant William T. Pye published an article warning about the vulnerability of Pearl Harbor to a surprise aerial attack. He argued that the location and layout of the American fleet made the base an easy target for enemy forces. Although the article was largely ignored at the time, the accuracy of its predictions is unsettling. These coincidences make us wonder how far major historical events can be foreseen. Was the attack on Pearl Harbor inevitable? Were all the clues there, waiting to be noticed? Or are these coincidences simply the result of random events that happen to align in disturbing ways? In any case, the attack on Pearl Harbor is a classic example of how seemingly unrelated events can be linked in mysterious ways. This leads us to reflect on the role of destiny in history and on how far we can truly predict the future. Coincidences in World War II. Hitler and Henry Tandy, one of the most striking moments in World War II, involves a coincidence that could have changed the course of history if it had unfolded differently. During World War I, a British soldier named Henry Tandy found himself face-to-face with a young, wounded, and unarmed German soldier. In an act of compassion, Tandy decided to spare the man's life. That man would later become Adolf Hitler, the leader of Nazi Germany and one of the main architects of World War II and the Holocaust. Hitler, who survived World War I, remembered this encounter and even mentioned Tandy's act of mercy in conversations. This coincidence raises a haunting question. What if Henry Tandy had made a different decision that day? What if he had killed Hitler instead of sparing him? Could World War II and all its tragic consequences have been avoided? This coincidence not only makes us reflect on the role of individual decisions in history, but also reminds us of how seemingly insignificant events can have monumental repercussions. Tandy's decision, which may have seemed small at the time, ultimately affected the course of history in ways he could never have imagined. This type of coincidence is a powerful reminder that in many cases, humanity's fate can rest in the hands of individuals who make decisions in critical moments. The story of Hitler and Tandy makes us question how far destiny can be shaped by individual choices and whether something greater is at work guiding these moments. Numerical coincidences. The power of numbers and history. Numbers have always played an intriguing role in human history. Since ancient times, people have believed that certain numbers hold special meanings or even mystical powers. One classic example is the number 13, often associated with bad luck in many cultures. But numerical coincidences go far beyond simple superstitions. In many cases, numbers seem to play a significant role in historical events in ways that defy understanding. One of the most famous examples of numerical coincidences is the 27 Club, a group of iconic musicians who died at the age of 27 under often tragic circumstances. Among the members of this club are Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain, and Amy Winehouse. The fact that so many talented musicians died exactly at the age of 27 raises the question: is there something special, or perhaps even cursed about that age? Another intriguing example involves the number 11 and the attacks on September 11th, 2001. The first plane to hit the World Trade Center was American Airlines Flight 11. The number of letters in New York City is 11, as is the number of letters in Afghanistan, the country that would become the center of the War on Terror. The attack occurred on September 11th. 9/11, and 9 plus 1 plus 1 equals 11. Coincidences like these make us question whether numbers hold some hidden significance in events of great magnitude. These examples suggest that perhaps numbers play a larger role in our lives and in history than we can perceive. Do numbers really carry some kind of special power? Or are we simply looking for patterns where none exist? These numerical coincidences are a reminder that no matter how much we try to understand the world, there will always be mysteries that remain beyond the world. Our comprehension. Numbers may be a secret language of the universe, a way of connecting us to invisible forces that shape humanity's destiny. Cosmic coincidences. Einstein and Newton, and the synchronicity of science. Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein, two of the greatest geniuses in the history of science, are also connected by a coincidence that seems almost cosmic in its precision. Newton was born in 1643, and his work revolutionized physics and mathematics, laying the groundwork for our understanding of motion and gravity. Nearly 2 centuries later, in 1879, Albert Einstein was born and challenged Newton's ideas with his theory of relativity, which radically changed our view of time, space, and gravity. What makes this coincidence even more interesting is the fact that both scientists fundamentally changed our understanding of the universe. Newton formulated the laws of motion and explained how gravity operates between celestial bodies. Einstein, on the other hand, showed that time and space are not absolute but flexible and shaped by gravity. In addition to their scientific contributions, there is an intriguing coincidence in their deaths. Newton died in 1727, while Einstein passed away in 1955, nearly 200 years later. This coincidence makes us reflect on how the emergence of great minds may, in some way, be connected to the course of history and destiny. Did the universe, in some way, plan for these brilliant minds to appear at specific moments in history to help us unravel its mysteries? Or is this coincidence merely the result of random events that happen to align in a surprising way? In any case, the connection between Newton and Einstein makes us reflect on how time, science, and destiny might be intertwined in ways we have yet to fully understand. Perhaps the emergence of geniuses like these is more than a coincidence. Perhaps it is a manifestation of the universe's synchronicity. Edgar Allan Poe's supernatural coincidence, premonition, or coincidence. Edgar Allan Poe, the master of suspense and horror, wrote some of the darkest and most disturbing stories in literature. However, what few people know is that one of his stories is shrouded in a chilling coincidence that seems to have come straight out of one of his macabre narratives. In 1838, Poe wrote a novel called The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket. In the book, for survivors of a shipwreck are stranded at sea with no food or water. In an act of desperation, they decide to kill and eat the youngest member of the group, a sailor named Richard Parker. About 46 years later, in 1884, a yacht called Mignonette sank in the Atlantic. For survivors were left adrift, and in a desperate bid for survival, they resorted to cannibalism, killing the youngest member of the group. The name of that young sailor? Richard Parker. The coincidence between Poe's story and the real-life incident is so extraordinary that many believe Poe may have had some form of premonition or supernatural insight. How could he predict such a specific and tragic event with such accuracy? This coincidence raises fascinating questions about the line between fiction and reality. Are our stories and creations somehow capable of anticipating the future? Or does the universe operate in mysterious ways, creating connections between seemingly unrelated events? The story of Poe and Richard Parker makes us reflect on the power of the mind and imagination, and on how strange and inexplicable events can occur in ways that defy any logic or understanding. The Sullivan family and the mystery of Lightning Roy Sullivan, known as the human lightning rod, is one of the most extraordinary people when it comes to coincidences. Sullivan, who was a park ranger, was struck by lightning not once, not twice, but 7 times throughout his life. The odds of a person being struck by lightning are incredibly low, but being struck 7 times defies any rational explanation. What makes Sullivan's story even more intriguing is that he was not the only member of his family to be struck by lightning. His brother was also struck by lightning and survived. The chances of 2 members of the same family being struck by lightning are so small that it almost seems impossible. This coincidence raises questions about the role of chance in our lives. Was the Sullivan family simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, repeatedly? Or was something more at play, like a unique destiny that connected them to the forces of nature? Roy Sullivan's story makes us reflect on extreme coincidences and how seemingly random events can repeat in ways that challenge human understanding. Is the fate of some individuals somehow intertwined with natural phenomena? In any case, Sullivan's story is a reminder that no matter how much we try to understand the world around us, there will always be mysteries that remain beyond our comprehension. Coincidences, destiny, and the inexplicable throughout. In this video, we explored some of the most extraordinary and mysterious coincidences in history. From presidents whose lives and deaths were eerily parallel, to maritime disasters foreshadowed in works of fiction, and moments when seemingly small decisions changed the course of humanity. These stories make us question how much of our lives is governed by chance, and how much is part of a predetermined path. Are coincidences truly just random events that happen to align in surprising ways? Or is destiny really in control, guiding our lives in ways we have yet to understand? These stories remind us that no matter how much we try to plan and control our lives, there will always be elements of mystery and surprise. Perhaps destiny exists, perhaps it doesn't, but what we can say for certain is that coincidences continue to fascinate and intrigue humanity. Now, we want to hear from you. Which of these coincidences did you find the most intriguing? Do you believe in the power of destiny, or do you think all of this is just a series of fortuitous events? Leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more fascinating stories like this one. See you next time. With this translation, the text has been adapted to fluent professional English while maintaining the depth and complexity of the original. It now reads naturally for an English-speaking audience, keeping the content engaging and thought-provoking.